Hey, welcome back to Current Mind. I'm so excited to be back, and I say back even though I think I dropped an episode at this point about 2 weeks ago, and 2 episodes per month. So, also, hi, I'm Nekamagbo, founder of Uru Collective, and welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome all. This is the space where I process out loud about creativity, business, building Uru Collective, my agency, and honestly, just figuring things out as I go. At this point, there's about 10 episodes or so. And so I hope you dig into those. If you've been here for a minute, I hope you've already listened to those. If not, totally okay, but please do listen. And then, yeah, so Happy New Year and welcome. So we're heading into, or we're already in February by the time you're listening to this. I went through a very pivotal time in December. It was such a weird time because, holidays is, you're celebrating the end of the year, you're doing all these things, and it just was like 2026 was like, actually, no, you're going to go into so many realizations immediately. And so that is essentially where I was mentally in the midst of like having so many end of the year deliverables, etc. So yeah, I in the process of that, like I was realizing things about myself, things I used to believe, or things I was currently believing, or things that I had even thought I had dropped. And I think the crux of this episode is something I'm trying to carry throughout the rest of the year, which is understanding and realizing that there is no finite amount of mistakes or corrections that you can make in your life. And I think I've carried the banner of being type A, all of that stuff. I've lowered the banner over time, but I think this December really showed me that it's still in me, right? And so it's still something that I'm sort of processing. But let me kind of stop jargoning and get more specific. So yeah, so I used to believe that there was a final version of myself waiting at the end of like a series of smart decisions, very calculated decisions, that if I just chose correctly enough times, the right projects, the right positioning, the right narrative, the right LinkedIn message, that I'd eventually arrive at some stable, coherent version of who I am supposed to be or was supposed to be, right? I spent the first week in Nairobi and Mombasa, and it reminded me that this belief is comforting and false. So I've been sitting with this idea for a minute now, not in like a crisis way, not in like in a burn it all down way, but just sitting and reflecting with myself and thinking like, why and where did I get this idea that like I can make so many smart decisions that somehow I would be immune to the world or immune to like life and how it takes us in so many ways, right? And of course, like you can make well-informed decisions, right? But there's only so much you can know at the time. There's only so much you can source from multiple people. I've shared on this podcast that I have OCD. And so one of the compulsions, a lot of people with OCD is like you source so many opinions, so many information points, right? And professionally, I mean, it helps, but there are some times where in your personal and professional that you just have to go. You just have to say, like, what is it in this that I want for myself? Or what is it in this that works most for me? And sometimes sometimes it's very hard for me to reach that thought process because I'm focused on being right or being received well by others. I'm focused on by others, aka like friends, family, colleagues, etc. That and it's not necessarily from like a place of acceptance, but I just want to be seen as someone who makes calculated and smart decisions. I was telling my friend, can I curse on? I mean, it's my pod. So I was telling my friend, like in December, going through all of this and going through all of like these personal matters, right? That I was like, at the end of the day, my biggest fear is being a dumb bitch. Oh God, like my biggest fear is being a dumb bitch. Like, and it's like I don't have like a sweeter way of saying that, but yeah, like that's a fear. Like just afraid of not making decisions or making decisions that are not within my goals or within my processing. or like just decisions that don't make sense for where I'm trying to go, right? And so this episode is not necessarily like a pep talk. It's not like an embrace the journey and like, just try like because truthfully that doesn't work for me, right? It's about going towards something a bit more fundamental, and that is what happens when you realize that the only thing that can save you in a particular moment is if you just move? And what happens when you're getting so many questions about like where is this going to go towards, or where is this going to end, and you don't know? But usually you're used to knowing, or I was used to knowing. I was used to having all the answers. I was used to having great prediction, but this point in my business and my personal career, I don't have the answers. I'm just trying to move. I'm just trying to be comfortable. I'm just trying to be comfortable in the discomfort, rather. I'm just trying to sit in the uncertainty. And for the first time, I don't have the words to comfort those who love me, who care for me, and are scared of what I have going on. And that looks like entrepreneurship that I'm still, I don't want to say waiting to see the returns, because you see it every day, right? You really have to like look, but you don't see the returns like immediately financially, right? And that's hard because you still have needs, you still have your day to days, you're still looking at different options, but it's just not coming from the source that you've been putting so much time and energy towards. So I had to ask myself, where does this arrival fantasy come from? Where does this idea of me getting somewhere and now I'm whole, now I'm capable, now I deserve to be stabled? And I think it started early. School gives us the School gives us this framework, right? You complete your levels, you do, if you're in the US, elementary school, middle school, high school, then you do college or university. Each one has its own clear endpoint. You graduate, you arrive, and then you move to the next level, right? You enter your job, and even in your career structures, it works a similar way, or honestly, the same way. Junior, mid level, senior, associate, manager, director, each rung promises that the next one will be more stable, more certain, and more like you've made it, right? And then for those of us who are navigating multiple cultures, diaspora kids, third culture kids, people building across Africa and beyond, there's this additional layer. There's this pressure to prove that the path you chose is the right one. Not because you're expected to be, well, yes, partially because you're expected to make smart, calculated, and informed decisions, especially because our parents came before us. They made decisions. They had a tough life. They've built somewhat of a foundation for us and to do well and to thrive from basically where they stopped, to hand off the baton. And so that pressure to prove that you're on the right track is heavy. And that leaving or staying or returning or building from a distance, like it's hard that you arrived at something worth all the explaining you've had to do. Like you've gotten somewhere that maybe like it made sense, and then you decided to choose something made sense, as in like, okay, like it contributes to the arrival fantasy. And then you decide to choose something different that is not so stable, right? And something I'm noticing is that stability for me is mistaken for identity, right? Meaning the thing that you chose that is unstable, right? I find myself like asking myself, like, are you crazy? Bitch, are you crazy? Are you a stupid bitch? And yeah, like I was asking myself, like, why are we sitting here, or why are we in this decision that is not stable? Why am I here in Nigeria? I haven't like arrived, right? I haven't seen that consistency of like of money, of deals, etc., rolling in like on the 1st and the 15th. Like, yeah, this deal is going to be paid, or this deal is going to be responded to, right? And I mean, that's hard because it starts to fall on your identity. You start to question if you will ever arrive, because again, you are in this fantasy of arrival. And we think that once our circumstances stabilize, once the business is profitable, once the platform is established, the narrative is clear, we'll know who we are. our identity will be solidified, we will have arrived. And that's not how identity actually works. Identity isn't a destination. That's not something you build toward and then maintain. It's something that shifts as you encounter new information, new experiences, new versions of what matters to you. And this is especially true for someone doing creative or cultural work because our work requires us to stay open, to stay curious, to take risk, to let what we make and what we build teach us who we're becoming. But the arrival myth tells us opposite. It tells us that to decide who we are first, then build that from a stable place, to have a clear brand, a coherent narrative, a fixed point of view. And look, I get why that's appealing. You know, clarity sells, consistency builds trust. People want to know what they're getting when they engage with you. But what if who you are keeps changing? Not like in a flaky way, not in an inconsistent way. You still have your core values, but in a growing up way, in a deepening way. Like, what if the most honest thing you can do is acknowledge that you're building in motion, that there's no final version waiting at the end of this? Which, as I say that out loud, that is very scary. There's no arrival point. Like, this is just life, and you take all that life gives you. And I think I resisted or we resist this because it feels so unstable. Like I used to be so annoyed with the phrase, that's just life. That's just life. It's risky. Like we're asking people to trust us without giving them the certainty that they or we crave. Like I would love to tell someone, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and say, not even I would love. I've been a person who said, "I'm going to do X and I'm going to do it this way." And the moment I deviate, I feel immense guilt. I don't know if that's true for you, but I feel immense guilt. Like I told them I was going to do it this way. It happened another way and I feel terrible. And once I get in that loop, as I did in December, like it feels like you've lost yourself. Like it's a growth point or it's a point of you choosing something that's different from, what you told someone. And, maybe the other person, like a friend of mine was just like, okay, you changed your mind. I was like, I changed my mind. She's like, yeah, you changed your mind. And it felt like who gave me the right to change my mind? And it's like nobody has to give you the right. That's just the way of life. You change your mind once you grow or you have new information, right? But here's the thing. The people who love you, the people who resonate with your work, they're not looking for a finished product. They're looking for someone who's willing to think out loud, to build in public, to say, I don't have this figured out yet, but I'm doing it anyway. Or I'm trying, or I'm thinking about this, I might try it this way. That's actually more trustworthy than pretending you've arrived or pretending that you're still going the same direction that you set out in the beginning. Because we all know on some level that arrival is performance, and I'm tired of performing. Maybe you are too. Tired of performing from the sense of I don't have these answers for myself, and therefore I can't give it to a loved one or, whoever that, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it this way. Sometimes I just need to think out loud. Sometimes I just need to take each day by day and make the most informed decision of the day. And it's really, really hard to say that or for me now or before a couple of weeks ago and still now, it's really hard to say that, no, I don't actually know, but I'm moving in this direction. I'm trying, but once the direction changes, I'll let you know and not walk away with guilt in that. So here's where this gets hard, right? The moment you realize, okay, there's no arrival point, right? The moment you realize that, it then becomes all right, well, it's time for you to choose yourself publicly. Most choosing yourself narratives are private. You quit the job, you end the relationship, you walk away from the opportunity that doesn't fit. These are internal decisions, private reckoning, and they're very important. But like, what happens when you're choosing yourself in public? What about when the identity you're outgrowing is the one people know you for, the one that's attached to your platform, your reputation, your work? And this next part, it may feel like, oh, okay, well, I'm not a public figure, but no, I think, yeah, I think like a business owner, career professional, whomever, like you have your public could very much be your friends, your family, your coworkers, extended family, right? And that is your public, right? And so what happens when you have to choose yourself in front of them? Because now it's not just about your own clarity, it's about visibility, accountability, and judgment. When I started Uber Collective, I had a clear narrative. I knew how I knew how to talk about it, I knew what it represented, and that clarity helped people understand what we were building or what I was building at the time solo. But over time, as the work evolved, as I evolved, and that narrative started to feel like a container I'd grown out of. Not wrong, exactly, just incomplete. Not expansive enough for what it was actually happening. And even now, as I, still consider us a speaker first agency, right? I'm still exploring like what that means and how it translates to the outside world. And maybe we're no longer a speaker agency, and that will be a grief process of, or a quick, I hope, grief process of saying, okay, this is no longer what it is. Here's what it is now. And just going full force in motion with what it is. But choosing yourself in public means being seen like while becoming, whether you're a company, a person, and that is deeply uncomfortable, at least for me, because when you're private about your evolutions, especially on socials, I'm seeing like the, dip out for a year and come back like this. Like you can control the reveal. Like you can wait until you figured it out, until the new identity is clear, coherent, and then you present it and it's like it's magic. But when you're public about it, when you build in front of people, when you speak from the in-between place, you don't get that control. People are going to misunderstand you. They're going to hold you to the old version. They're going to ask you why you're not doing the thing you said you cared about anymore, or why you're not doing it this way, or why this place just doesn't work for you, or why you chose to go this way, right? And you have to be okay with that. Like not in a defensive way, not in a let me explain myself way, but in a grounded way, in a this is where I am now and that's enough way. And it sucks. I'm not even gonna lie. Like this is a longer episode because it's so many realizations, but I'm not gonna lie, it sucks. It really does, especially as someone who always wants to have the answers, both for themselves and for the people they love. It sucks because you feel like you're being rude. You feel like you're not being consistent or you're not being yourself, quote unquote. And I think this is really relevant for those of us who are working in media, different platforms, personal brands, leadership spaces, because our identities are literally part of our work. We can't separate who we are from what we build. And that means our evolution is visible. Our uncertainty is visible. Our contradictions are visible. And the question is can you be okay with that? Can we be okay with that? Can we trust the people who are supposed to be here will understand? That clarity will come, but it doesn't have to come first. I'm learning that choosing myself in public is an ongoing practice. Like if you've seen my socials lately, it's like this girl is in Kenya, she's posting photography, she started a furniture business, which is another podcast within itself. She started a furniture business. Now she's posting that she's at a gallery. Like I just feel like I'm just doing shit in public. And it's not like one big moment of courage. It's a series of small decisions to speak to where I am. I'm not always on set. I'm not always with talent. And it's like it's can't speak from where I think I'm supposed to be. I'm being real. The month of January, like I've been here, I've been there, just figuring shit out. And that requires a different kind of confidence, not the confidence of having it all figured out or saying, this is my business and this is what I do, but the confidence literally to say, I'm still figuring this out and that's legitimate. I can take this day by day. It doesn't need to be a response or answer right now. And so, yeah, building in motion. That's where we are. So if there is no arrival point, if we're building in motion, what does that actually require of us, right? And the first thing is letting go of premature coherence. We want things to make sense early. We want to be able to explain what we're doing in a neat elevator pitch, and it's not possible. We want our trajectory to have a clear narrative arc. What is it like? What was it? It's like the climax, the conclusion, that whole story arc, right? But real growth is so much messier than that. Real evolution requires periods of incoherence, periods where you can't quite explain what you're building because you're in the middle of building it. Yeah, and that's okay. That's actually where the most interesting work happen, but it's so uncomfortable. I will not ever lie to you on this podcast. Like, it is very uncomfortable for someone who is like someone like me who's used to saying this is what it is and here's where it's going to be in XYZ amount of time. I can't predict. I can only try every single day. And so much of what I see in the creative and cultural industries across Africa and the diaspora, the most innovative stuff, the stuff that actually shifts things, it doesn't come from people who had it all figured out. It comes from people who are willing to build from a place of productive uncertainty. And the second thing is building systems that allow evolution. This is practical. If you build your entire brand, your entire platform, your entire business models around one fixed identity, you trap yourself. I think I brush up against this a lot, especially working with creatives, where they're concerned about if I show people that I'm interested in interior design, they'll start to think I'm not serious about acting, or I'm not serious about this, or I'm not serious about that. If you build in enough flexibility into your systems and into, who you are, that you're designed and you're capable of holding multiple versions of you, multiple expressions, multiple directions, you give yourself room to grow, and therefore your audience, this is more public facing, gives you room to grow, right? And if you're moving from a personal standpoint of like, it's hard to build in systems that allow you to evolve, especially if you're building in front of family or friends and who crave that certainty for you because they care and they're just scared for you. But you do have to learn how to remove yourself from that environment. Doesn't mean you stop talking to your family or friends. It just means you settle into yourself and take it day by day, or you take it idea by idea. And for me, this has meant thinking about Uru not as a fixed thing with a fixed mission, but as a living structure that can hold whatever my thinking and my work evolves into. It's meant creating content and platforms that aren't so niche that I can't expand. It's meant being strategic about what I commit to long term versus what I hold lightly, being open to short term. I used to have this sort of mind of like, okay, well, if we're not going the long stretch, then what's the point? There are some deals that short term is okay. Just take it where it is, and if it evolves into something else, then cool. Go with that. But for now, short term is okay. And the third thing is resisting the urge to explain every transition. I've learned this because my life has shifted and tossed and everything just within a month, right? I've learned that I can't bring everyone along, not because of like their capabilities or anything like that, but solely because I'm changing so much that it's almost like exhausting or slows me down to begin to explain what's changing. I just have to move and share when I'm able to. Because it also, like I was saying before, it's also a bit of a compulsion. Because when I do share, I want to justify my choices. I want people to understand why I'm shifting, why something that mattered before doesn't matter the same way now. I'm learning that not every transition, again, needs a public explanation. And again, public, you can use this interchangeably. Like if you're a creator, public figure, even just within your family and like, personal and professional circles, it doesn't need that public explanation, right? Sometimes you can just move and trust that the people paying attention will see the thread. Over explaining to me now is often a sign that you're still trying to convince yourself, that you're not fully trusting your own judgment. And I say this specifically to me, and if you resonate with it, you. But when you really trust yourself, when you really know you're making a choice, you can be quieter about it. You can let the work speak. The fourth thing is trusting taste and judgment over certainty. This maybe is the most important one because again, if there's no arrival point, if there's no fixed formula to follow, then what do you navigate by? That's your taste, your judgment, your intuition, your faith, the internal compass that, tells you what resonates and what doesn't. Not trends, not what's supposed to work, not what worked for someone else, but what feels true to you in this moment with the information you have right now. And the thing about taste, it develops, it deepens. The more you build, the more you create, the more you make decisions and live with the consequences, the sharper your judgment gets. But you have to use it, you have to trust it, you have to stretch it like a muscle, quite literally. And even when you can't fully articulate why something feels right or wrong, that's what building emotion requires, not certainty, but just trust in your own discernment. And I say discernment specifically because your discernment is informed by your faith, your intuition, your judgment, your taste. Just continuing to refine, especially those last two, your judgment and your taste. Whether it's through education, a higher power, just refine those pieces at least because you won't have certainty. So here's what I want to leave you with in finality, and probably my longest episode. There is no arrival point, not in your career, not in your identity, not in your creative work, not in the cultural contributions you're trying to make. There's only deeper honesty and the courage to keep moving without a fixed identity to hide behind. There's not one face that you can carry throughout your life and throughout your career. And I know that can feel destabilizing, especially when everything around us is telling us to have it all figured out, to be consistent, to arrive. But maybe the most radical thing we can do, especially those of us building across cultures, across contexts in public, is to refuse that pressure. Now, when I say this, it's not gonna be easy, and it's not easy to really insist that motion is a legitimate state, that becoming is ongoing, that our work can hold our contradictions. It is hard because you too, like you'll get tired. You'll be saying like, okay, like when does this part end? When does this part end? Maybe it's the part where you're trying to hire out a full team. Maybe it's the part where you've been posting and like it's not, you're not really sure like what it's going to lead to. It's so many things, right? But I don't have a neat conclusion for you. I don't have 5 steps to embrace uncertainty or whatever, right? I just have this. You're allowed to outgrow where you were or who you were. You're allowed to build from the in-between place. You're allowed to be seen while you're still figuring it out. And the people who are supposed to be there, they'll stay, they'll understand, they'll grow with you. Because the most interesting work isn't made by people who've arrived. It's made by people who are brave enough to keep moving. So keep moving. And that's it for this episode of Current Mind. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for building, for thinking, for refusing to perform Arrival. I'm Neka Magbo. This is Current Mind, and I'll see you next time.